They all make the same mistake, which is to praise the idea of faith, elevate it over reason and evidence, and to say, on the most important thing of all, which is why are we here, what are we to do, what is the meaning of our life, on the most important questions, they say that it's very important to decide it without evidence, that you must make an unprovable assertion, and then demand respect for it. Well, I think the sleep of reason brings forth monsters.
Dr. Craig, we have yet to do a podcast on the Hitchens debate, and boy, we would just really need to. There's been a lot of information at reasonablefaith.org on this debate with Christopher Hitchens out in Los Angeles at Biola, and a lot on YouTube about it. Pretty good coverage as well on this debate. Being that he is a journalist, he's very popular, and he's one of the four horsemen of the so-called New Atheism. And so this was a strategic debate, I think, as well, to confront one of the four horsemen in a very influential movement who's had a bestseller.
Yes, I think it was strategic in that sense, Kevin. Initially, I was reluctant to do this debate because I have had pretty negative experiences in the past debating with people who are not themselves scholars. You can't argue with someone who doesn't understand logic, who doesn't understand that they have just made an incoherent statement or that their conclusions don't follow from their premises. Argumentation is almost futile with someone who doesn't understand argument. So I've had some less than pleasant debates with graduate students or lawyers in the past where they just weren't very good debates. And so I didn't really want to do this thing with Hitchens. But the folks at Biola just pressed me very hard and said he's a prominent spokesman for the New Atheism, and it would be very important for someone to debate him and just to really expose the superficiality and the emptiness of his rhetoric. And so for that reason, I did take it on, and I'm glad that I did. I thought the debate went well.
The Frank Zindler debate that you did in Chicago is similar to this because Frank Zindler was considered to be unbeatable when it came to debating, and that if you just really wanted to put the Christian in his place, bring in Zindler from the American Atheist because he would just mop the floor with you. In fact, Ravi Zacharias was told that. He said,
really?
I tell you what we'll do. You think you can debate? We'll put Zindler up against you. And
I remember when they were looking for the atheist opponent for that debate, and they picked Zindler. And Lee Strobel and Mark Middleburg said, well, can't you get a bona fide scholar, someone who is more credentialed? And Rob Sherman, the American Atheist fellow, said, oh, no. He said, this is our man. This is the guy that we want to do this. And as I watched videos in preparation for that debate, it turned out that Zindler could be a formidable opponent. I saw him debate some Christians, and he really took them to pieces. So that was a kind of similar confrontation in that this was a popularizer sort of fellow who could be rhetorically effective. It was also similar in another sense, Kevin. I think these were the two most widely disseminated or broadcast debates that I've been in. Both of them had huge audiences live of several thousand people, and then both of them were also being simultaneously broadcast, either through radio or internet, just all around the country and even in foreign nations. So they were very similar in that sense as well.
Let me just say you were extremely successful in that debate. And that, again, was strategic because it put to rest this idea that no one could beat this American Atheist spokesperson and who did not make a good showing in this debate. And I think that launched a lot of things for reasonable faith in that Zondervan published that, and a lot of people picked that up in bookstores and things like that, and have watched that debate.
That's the great thing about these recordings is that they have a life of their own long after the event is gone and forgotten. People in Australia have been watching the Zindler debate, as you say, and now this Hitchens debate as well, being professionally recorded by Illustra Media, should go out just all over.
Well, some comments on the debate then.
Well, I had a little bit of fun with the debate because 2 weeks before the debate, I was on a panel discussion with Christopher Hitchens in Dallas at this Christian book exposition. And on the panel were Doug Wilson and Lee Strobel as well and some other folks. And I had the last word in this panel discussion and was able to summarize, I think, 10 arguments that the theists on the panel had presented for Christian theism. And opposed to that was just one argument that Christopher Hitchens had offered. And even that, he admitted, was answered if you take a Christian theological perspective. So he really had nothing to stand on. So he was seated right to my left, immediately at my left elbow. So I turned to him and I said, now in 2 weeks, we're going to be debating these issues at Biola University. And I hope that you'll use that time to do a little homework so that we can have a more substantive discussion when we meet. And I was just needling him a little bit, kind of teasing him. And unfortunately, he didn't use those 2 weeks to do much homework, I'm afraid.
Well, he depends
because the discussion wasn't any better.
No, and he depends on his rhetorical skill. He is a wordsmith, and he's awesome to listen to. You want to let him talk because he's so interesting and he has such a way with words. What we have to do, however, is look beyond that and see if there's any substance to
and that's hard for many people to do, Kevin. You hear that British accent, and it sounds so urbane and so intelligent. And then, as you say, the rhetoric, the comparisons of God to a North Korean dictator, things of this sort, they're very visual images and makes him for an engaging speaker, as you say. And it's hard for people to actually look beyond that and assess the substance of the argument.
He came over to a table where I was sitting after the panel discussion that you're referring to, and he remarked along the lines of, I'm rather surprised at this new trend in Christianity of actually having facts and evidence to back up what you believe. He says, I thought it was just about faith.
Yes. He mentioned that in one of the events that I was involved in, either the panel discussion or perhaps the debate. He thought apologetics was something new, some radical turn somehow. And I thought, my goodness, had he never heard of C.S. Lewis? As a British person, you would think he would have heard of Lewis or other great British scholars, but evidently he had not. And on the one hand, that's discouraging to think that we've had so little impact in that area. On the other hand, it is encouraging that here is a new atheist who is suddenly being confronted for the first time with argument and evidence for the Christian faith and finds this to be something new and challenging that needs to be dealt with.
Yeah. I mean, maybe it could, God could use it, and this is our hope with Reasonable Faith Ministries, is that God can use that to begin to work on a person.
Oh, absolutely, Kevin. I saw in the open forum the other day an email from a fellow who had lost his faith something like 20 years ago, and when someone asked him why, he said, it was because in talking with people, I could see that the most insightful people were non-Christians, and that my reasons for believing in Christianity were all fear-based and were utterly untenable, and I just began to see I had no reasons to believe what I believe at all. And so this person walked away. And I think we can prevent that from happening if we can show Christian kids, high schoolers and others, that some of the most reflective and deep people are Christians. And the fact is, that's the truth. They really are. And that, moreover, Christianity isn't fear-based or just a leap of faith into the dark, that there are really good arguments and evidence for what we believe, and that these hold up in one-on-one, face-to-face confrontations with the best that secular atheism and agnosticism can offer.
Now, at the same time, Hitchens indicates that what he sees falsely as a new trend in Christianity. He thinks that it's a capitulation to science, and that the advance of science is causing Christianity to change, and if it continues in this way, then Christianity will go away and be taken over by science because the evidence is against God and so on. So, in another way, he's not very congratulatory. He's also saying, well, you're adjusting your belief to new data that is coming in, and that's going to erode your faith.
That's just, again, historically naive. If you look at, for example, the history of apologetics, you can see from Isaac Newton on prominent scientists appealing to scientific evidence, especially the Bridgewater treatises on the argument for design or the teleological argument, the Gifford lectures.